Thank you so much for everything. I'd like to thank the festival and all the sponsors and the residents of the island. Looking at this, the first thing I'm thinking is how much does it weigh, because I got to get back on the helicopter. But that's really special. I would have this in my home without the plaque on it, because I am such a fan. And the fact that the Chaplin family, I'd like to thank them as well, gave me a nod and allowed me to help establish this award is quite an honor. You know, all the Swingers, when I first sort of started on the scene, was considered a bit of a cutting-edge indie comedy. But the fact is, if you look at because I hate to have to wait for another one if I drop it. Or I'll have to win it again next year. So that's hard to repeat the Charlie Chaplin Award. The comedy is not. There's nothing new about comedy. There's certain rhythms and patterns that have been firmly established, dating back to the live days of vaudeville, when performers like Chaplin would hone his skills on the stage in front of a live audience, and only then would he or Keaton or the Marx Brothers eventually bring that act to the screen. And that type of training ground doesn't really exist anymore as it once did. But what you can do is try to perform. I came from a background of improvisation where you learn a lot of the same lessons. And you could go, much like a painter would go look at the masters at a museum. I would go see the masters at the Silent Movie Theater in Los Angeles and study it. And they did it without cuts and without special effects, at least not the type that we have now. And just to study the way that they would work the frame and get that rhythm and screen those films before I would go off to do a movie like Elf. And so it sometimes feels, when I show my kids the old black and white silent films, certainly at home, it's very hard for them to appreciate what it is and how important and relevant that work is. But the funny thing is, when you, and I've done this, when you screen one of the older films with live musical accompaniment in a theater with an audience, it's amazing how timeless it is, especially Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin was a guy who was a perfectionist. He would do up to 100 takes sometimes, reshoot. Everybody thinks of his performance, but what's really exciting to me is his direction and how he was able at the time to jump from short form to long form, from performing to directing. And it's a tradition that I'm very lucky to be able to enjoy now. I just finished a movie called Chef, a small independent film. After doing the big ones, it's nice to go back to the smaller ones too. And I just worked 2 days ago with Robert Downey Jr. on it, who, of course, channeled Chaplin and was, perhaps the high watermark of his creative performances. And have had long conversations over the course of several Iron Man movies with him about Chaplin and how he studied him and prepared him. And I think that if I could, on the one hand, shed some light on his career to the next generation, but also something he loved, which I loved as well, which is his island. I stayed right across the way in the Metropole with my family. I have 3 small children. And I'm a bit of a nostalgic type, as you can tell from my taste in comedy, but also, you look at Swingers, the discovery of old Hollywood and trying to sort of bring that to a new generation, that music. And when I first came to Catalina, I had the experience of walking, into a different time. And the balancing act of development and conservation that's occurred on this island for decades is quite astounding. Not only I don't know that this would feel so special were it not surrounded by so much untouched beauty. And the stories from the spring training of the Chicago Cubs, from the casino, just the whole Avalon itself, the tradition, film history, who spent time out here, how many important moments that have affected all of our lives as we watch the silver screen had come from things that had occurred here. Buys and birth control is also innovations in science as well. So it's a place that I've loved, and I think it's the combination of being the first person to receive this award and where it's being held that really made this something special that I didn't want to miss. I changed the plans of my parents, who I'd always wanted to have come out here. My father's a sailor, and I said, oh my God, would he love it? Would he love it here? How do you get somebody coming from the East Coast to visit you and then get them on a ferry? Drive to Long Beach, go on a ferry, and then we changed. They were supposed to come another week, and I changed their plans just so that they could come and join me here and see your beautiful island.
Thank you.
So I also would like to, I know I've been congratulated for my writing, my directing, my acting. Nobody said anything about my weight fluctuation, which I think they give De Niro Oscars. At least mention it here, what I was able to accomplish, consciously or otherwise. But it is a pleasure to watch that kind of assembly without actually dying. Doesn't happen. So they say that it's a good spiritual practice to visualize your own funeral and see what you would feel like if you were gone, and try to meditate and meditate on that and think of what life would be like without you there anymore, and how does that change the way that you would live your life. It puts things in perspective, and this was in many ways like attending my own funeral. So I felt like everybody was a nice gentle applause at the end of the in memoriam award ceremony. So thank you for that as well. And I think I've pretty much covered everything that I was hoping to say, and now I'll field some questions. Is there any questions? Thank you again very much for your hospitality and making me a part of this island's history. I'm so proud to be a part of that. Thank you.